the whole idea of MAGA was that it was going to drain the swamp, that there was this all-powerful Washington elite that protected itself, that defied accountability, that was above the law, and that was working against ordinary people.
And the more desperate he is getting, it seems like the more stuff is coming out. And the more desperate he is getting, the more various news agencies are doing on the story.
Yeah.
Because it's almost, they found the weakness here.
Please look elsewhere. Don't please look at this Epstein stuff anymore. It's driving me mad.
Yeah.
Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson just announced the House will start its summer recess a day early in an effort to stave off Democratic lawmakers' plans to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files.
This is quite the moment. Before the election, the MAGA elite, those around Trump, were promising that they would expose everything about the Epstein scandal. 6 months into Donald Trump's presidency, with the scandal growing, the Speaker of the House, ally of Donald Trump, says, no, you're going home early. We don't want to vote on any of this. We don't want to reveal anything.
Imagine literally shutting down Congress to avoid having a vote that could embarrass your president. That's what the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, has just done. He sent everyone home so they don't vote to open up the Epstein files. Welcome to the Newsagents USA.
The Newsagents USA.
It's John.
It's Emily. And as of yesterday, Congress is firmly shut. The Speaker, Mike Johnson, has basically ended all legislative business and sent the House home early to start their summer holidays.
Nice.
Nice. What a kind man. What a curious creature he is. He's basically trying to stop House Republicans voting with Democrats to pass legislation that would demand the release of the Epstein files. It is so unusual to find any bit of cross-party legislation in America right now. It pretty much doesn't happen. Democrats vote for Democrat things, Republicans vote for Republican things, and suddenly you've got this extraordinary group of Democrats and Republicans all willing to get together to vote to release the Epstein files. Mike Johnson doesn't like it one little bit because he thinks it's going to embarrass the president. And so what's he done? He's stopped the vote and sent everyone home so they can't do it for at least a month.
And it turns one of the foundational beliefs of MAGA on its head. The whole idea of MAGA was that it was going to drain the swamp, that there was this all-powerful Washington elite that protected itself, that defied accountability, that was above the law, and that was working against ordinary people. And here we have a widespread belief, fueled by the key people in the Trump circle, that there was this terrible conspiracy involving Jeffrey Epstein and very powerful people. And now it is those very people who are saying you can't know anything about it.
Yeah.
And that is causing such unbelievable dissonance, cognitive dissonance for the Republican base. They're saying,
Yeah, I
what?
think that's right.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, what's going on here? And just to give you some of the names that are involved in the signing of this bill, there is a Democrat called Ro Khanna from California. He's a House, congressman who's bringing forward this bill with a Republican, and it is being signed by the likes of Marjorie Taylor Greene, she of, the space lasers, etc. In other words, people that are so MAGA are now willing to sign a Californian Democrats' bill because they believe it's important to get to the bottom of this question. And Mike Johnson, who was the Speaker, who was at one point saying, yeah, we do need to know more, has now said, we're done being lectured on transparency. I mean, to your point, stop telling us to be open about these things. Really? I thought that was the whole point of draining the swamp. I thought the whole point of draining the swamp was that you get the secrets out and you get rid of the corruption and you tell people what's really going on. And he's now said that actually all these questions surrounding Epstein are endless efforts to politicise the Epstein investigation. Funny that, because he wasn't saying that a week ago. He wasn't saying that until Trump, clearly embarrassed by all this stuff, made motions, we assume, to try and shut it all down.
Well, just across from the White House is the commerce offices, trade and commerce offices, which is where we've broadcast from. When you saw us in Washington and there's that kind of view over the White House, that's where we were. On that building yesterday was projected President Trump release all the Epstein files.
Yeah.
Now, okay, maybe a stunt, but it's close to Donald Trump's front door, and it's getting closer to his front door. And the more he proclaims that people need to move on, that they're weaklings for believing it, he's called his own supporters weaklings, and that they are past supporters if they still believe this stuff because he doesn't want them. I mean, he's offending his own base now with the way he's trying to cover it up. And it's not just that, the lengths he is going to try and get people to look in an opposite direction, coming out with some of those batshit stuff about people losing their citizenship and, football teams should change their names from the Washington Commanders back to the Washington Redskins, otherwise they're going to lose their funding. Please look elsewhere. Don't please look at this Epstein stuff anymore. It's driving me mad.
Yeah, on Sunday night, Trump posted 33 times on Truth Social. He sent 20 posts between 6:46 and 8:53 p.m. In other words, he was trying to flood the zone, the Truth Social zone, with 100 different things to look at. And normally when Trump does that, it works. If he shouts about something, whether it's changing the name of Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, whether it's changing the name of the Redskins to the Commanders and back again, whether it's talking about immigration on the border, people tend to follow where his gaze goes. This time, they will not take their eyes off the Epstein case. And I think it speaks to something really big, actually, which is Trump's inability for the first time to control a story he doesn't like. He's very good at directing people towards a story that he knows will garner him attention. But this time he's trying to shut something down. And the more desperate he is getting, it seems like the more stuff is coming out. And the more desperate he is getting, the more various news agencies are doing on the story.
Yeah.
Because it's almost, they found the weakness here. Whether it's the Wall Street Journal, and we should talk a little bit about the Wall Street Journal's release over the weekend, or just before the weekend, which showed what they claimed was a kind of doodle drawing birthday card that Trump sent Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday. Not only of a naked woman, not only of a sort of pubic hair scrawled Donald, but also these lines about the secrets that they keep. And Trump was so inflamed by this revelation, this story, that he has now sued the Wall Street Journal on 2 separate counts of $10 billion each. He's not a happy man. And of course, the Wall Street Journal's sticking by its story. Rupert Murdoch owns the Wall Street Journal and has been in these kind of litigations with Trump before, but it's a pretty reputable paper. And the fact that they are not backing down from their journalism suggests, at least, that they feel pretty confident of what they're doing. And the fact that Trump has gone nuclear on this one, and $20 billion is not a small sum, is it, for a lawsuit?
It's loose change for you and me, Emily, but for Donald Trump, that's real money.
But it is the first time a sitting president has ever sued a newspaper, from the White House, which suggests that he is really uncomfortable with the whole way this narrative is going, which is bringing him closer and closer to Jeffrey Epstein.
And so we kind of had a laugh about some of the, changing the name of a football team so it goes back to its unwoke past of being the Washington Redskins. There's more serious stuff out there. And one of them we should talk about is Barack Obama.
Yes.
So last week, Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat congresswoman, who moved over to MAGA land and is now Trump's director of national intelligence. She's one with a sort of
raccoony fringe.
Yeah, she used to
Can I
be the
describe it like
congresswoman
that?
for Hawaii.
Yes.
And once ran for the Democratic nomination to be president. She is now fully signed up as a Trump loyalist acolyte and gets the job of director of national intelligence as a result of it. Releases a report saying that Barack Obama was part of some treasonous conspiracy to suggest that Russia had influenced the result of the 2016 election and that he should be arrested and charged as follows. And normally, Obama just kind of goes, oh, this is just batshit stuff. I'm not even going to talk about this. I'm
Do
not
not
going to
dignify it with a response. Yeah.
This time, though, he has. He said, out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office doesn't normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response. But these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. These bizarre allegations are ridiculous and a weak attempt at distraction. It then goes on. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election but didn't successfully manipulate any votes. And then the killer line. These findings were affirmed in a 2020 report by the bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee led by the then chairman Marco Rubio.
Yeah, in
now
other words,
Donald Trump Secretary of State.
I mean, look, Gabbard won't be put off by that one. She's already been on Fox News accusing Obama of orchestrating a years-long coup to keep Trump from the White House. I mean, this stuff is kind of verifiably batshit. But Trump has now created and shared this AI-generated video of Obama being arrested and thrown in jail, all to the music of YMCA. I mean, you cannot get the beauty of this if you're just listening to the audio. But this idea that you would basically deep fake Obama in the White House and then have him arrested to your favourite tune is kind of, I mean, it is, I would say it's kind of a low point. But it is something that is so obviously a diversionary tactic for a man who is now desperate to change the story, that there is sort of no bottom to it, right?
But it's like Midas suddenly realising that he can't turn base metal into gold. Because every other time Donald Trump has managed to distract, has managed to deflect, has managed to get people to look the other way. Look, there's a shiny object, and like a dog we go running after it, like a dog being thrown a ball. On this, we have not, and the media has not, and the politicians have not, and the American public have not. Yeah. And so you've got a White House who are, and I think this bit speaks to the most desperate part of it of all. White House statements at the weekend were saying, this is all just a Beltway story. No one in the rest of America is interested in this. It's just you, the Washington elite. And if the White House is so out of touch with the fact that actually there is widespread belief that something, they just think that you can't just be the people who tell us you're going to open up all the doors and then you slam them all shut, which is what they're doing.
I think something else has happened as well, which is that Trump has now been in the White House 6 months, right? He has been in office. In other words, I think we just marked his sort of, 6 month kind of moment. And a lot of the polling, which is sort of, generically done around these sort of
approval
landmark
ratings
moments.
And whatever. Yeah.
A lot of the polling is not going his way on issues that he has traditionally been very strong on. Immigration, economy. There are more people now disagreeing with his handling of immigration. There are more people with his dealing with the economy. Those are the two areas that he campaigned on, that he has always felt strong on. And I think it slightly ties into the same picture, which is if people like the substance of what you're doing, they forgive you a lot else. If they're starting to question the very substance of what you're doing, if their lives aren't noticeably getting cheaper or easier, or their country, or they think that their country is moving in a really odd direction, then they are more likely to look at the things that you're telling them shouldn't be looked at.
I think this is a really interesting thing. I'm not sure I quite agree with you because I think there is a central paradox in what we're seeing at the moment. And the paradox is this, actually, I think on Trump's own terms, he's been astonishingly successful in what he promised the American people that he would do 6 months ago.
No, he's doing what he said he would do. That doesn't mean that the American people like what he's doing.
Okay, the number of illegal immigrant crossings coming across the southern border into the United States has dropped to a trickle compared to the massive numbers there were. That is what Donald Trump promised. Stock market is back booming again. So people who've got their 401ks are looking at it and saying, well, that's pretty good. That's very nice. We're doing very well there. Donald Trump has got the tax cuts passed. And yeah, the tax cuts are going to help the rich more than they're going to help middle-class Americans. But middle-class Americans are being helped. So in all sorts of ways, they should be feeling great about Donald Trump.
Sure. I mean, it's only one poll, and I don't know what the numbers are telling us. But, and CNN...
I don't doubt the polls. I think there is a really interesting disjunction.
Yeah.
That there is a success story that Donald Trump has got to tell, and yet the polls, people are pissed off with him.
OK, so this is the point. 55%, and this is a CNN poll, so you can make of that what you will, but 55% say the president's gone too far when it comes to deporting immigrants living in the US illegally. That's up 10 points since February. So it is entirely consistent that Trump came in saying mass deportations now. Everyone held up the sign at his convention, that he is doing mass deportations now, and that people are feeling much more uncomfortable about it than they thought. And yes, they thought that he was going to deport illegal criminals. They didn't think that he was going to deport the kindergarten teachers and the landscape gardeners and the people that have been running the corner stores and the people that have been living, in their communities for years. They didn't think he'd be turning up at the equivalent of home base and rounding up anyone who was kind of looking for odd joinery jobs on a sort of daily basis. And so it is entirely possible that people have come face to face with Trump's policies up close and gone, I don't know about this. A 10-point jump from February to, what are we, July? That's pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I do think that there is something that, that is interesting about what is happening in American politics right now, which is that Donald Trump, on his own terms, I think he expected he would be taking a massive victory lap right now. That on the key things of the economy, taxation, that he's doing the stock market, everything's swimmingly. The number of people crossing into America illegally, he's dropped that to an absolute trickle by the tough measures. And yet the American people, and particularly independents, are holding their nose.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can turn around. I think you can say he didn't stop the war in Ukraine on day one or even, in the first 6 months. Gaza is absolutely 100-fold worse than it was before he came in.
Americans don't take any notice of that.
I know, I'm just saying that if you're actually writing the ledger of how Trump's doing. The other thing I'd say is, I think we slightly... I mean, we took the James Carville, the Democratic strategist, with a pinch of salt where he said, Democrats don't need to do anything. Just, play dead and let Trump make his own mistakes. That strategy, I think you could argue, is sort of at the moment paying dividends for the Democrats. If they are doing that, or I don't know if they're shouting and it's all going into the void, but they don't need to do very much. Because right now, Trump is having the worst time he's had, I think, in office so far.
The only caveat I would add to that is Hunter Biden's 3 hours of rage, of swearing about the Democratic Party and how everybody is and how mean they are and how Joe Biden was wronged. I mean, honestly, if you've got Trump doing badly and having a tough week over all that's to do with Epstein, Hunter Biden's contribution
saved your soul.
was not really helpful.
In a moment, we'll be hearing from an Epstein expert, somebody who has looked into the Epstein conspiracy for many years and is now trying to work out what is really going on. We'll be talking to Will Sommer in a moment.
Well, we're joined now by Will Sommer from the Bulwark, and Will has charted kind of the conspiracy theories in America for the all the years of the Trump presidency, QAnon and on. But we're going to talk about Epstein, QAnon and on. Do you see what I did there? Anyway, sorry. And we're going to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, because this is one that just won't go away, even though Donald Trump would dearly love it to and keep saying, I can't understand why any of you are talking about this. Is this beginning to hurt?
I think it is. I think it is particularly beginning to hurt him among independent voters. But even some Republicans are starting to think, for 6-7 years now, this has been a real thing for the Republican Party. They've really focused on. They've said, once you put us back in power, we're going to get the truth here. And then suddenly, perhaps because of something they found in the files, they decide, oh, no, case closed. We're not going to talk about it anymore. And that kind of abrupt pivot has been even jarring for some Republicans.
Is it clear to you, Will, who's followed this story for so long, how much is conspiracy and how much actually does need to be opened and investigated?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of strange things that happened here. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein, someone who really seemed to have very few visible skills, suddenly becomes massively wealthy, is hanging out with some of the world's richest men, many of whom are paying him huge amounts, ostensibly to manage their money, but who knows? The idea that, I mean, even before he was arrested on these pedophile charges back in 2006, he had people were writing like, why is this guy so rich? What's going on here? Why is he hanging out with all these tycoons and these politicians? And so I think there are a lot of questions that remain. I mean, the U.S. attorney, the prosecutor who gave him this kind of sweetheart plea deal, he said he was told that Jeffrey Epstein was an intelligence asset, and that's why they had to let him go so easily. So I think there are a lot of unanswered questions here, and the only person in prison over it is Ghislaine Maxwell. So you wonder, I mean, are there other culpable people here?
Just rewind a second. An intelligence asset, because I've heard that from other MAGA people, and I was assuming that was conspiracy, and I was ready to dismiss it. That means he knew too much about people. I mean, what are you telling us?
Sure. So, and let's dig in on that. So, the U.S. the federal prosecutor who gave him this deal, basically, he claimed later, and he may have his own motivations because it ended up being a problem for him, but he claimed that he had been told, you have to go lightly on Jeffrey Epstein because he's intelligent, and so that that's reported. That's sort of a secondhand quote. A lot of people have really keyed in on that, but on one hand, perhaps we should take that with a grain of salt. But that has led to this broader sort of growth of conspiracy theories. Maybe some may be true, maybe, or maybe I think they're at this point unfounded, where people say, well, maybe this guy was, blackmailing prominent figures with his sex trafficking, or maybe he was somehow otherwise being used as like a cutout by intelligence agencies or an agent. And again, I mean, I don't think we really have any proof of it at the moment, but there is at least a little bit of smoke.
And Will, just while we're colouring in that little bit of the picture, let's just kind of also add that the federal prosecutor you're talking about, I think you're talking about Alex Acosta,
Yes.
who also went on to become Trump's first Labour secretary.
Yes, and so here in 2008 or so, Jeffrey Epstein signs this plea deal that was extraordinarily lenient towards regarding his treatment of underage girls in Florida. Not only was the penalty he got for that really lenient, but the federal and local authorities also agreed that they wouldn't pursue him for any other charges. Some of the investigators involved in the case thought, well, we could throw the book at this guy. We could put him away for decades. And suddenly they're watching this guy just walk away with a really sweet deal. And then you might say, well, presumably the prosecutor, Alex Acosta, who was involved in that, would be, blacklisted from politics forever. But instead, in the first Trump administration, he's appointed to be labor secretary, a huge position overseeing trafficking. And so ultimately he had to resign because people started asking so many questions about this deal. But you might say if Donald Trump was this like huge crusader against Jeffrey Epstein, why would he appoint someone who had given Epstein such a sweetheart plea deal to his cabinet?
So do you think that Epstein was blackmailing powerful figures?
I would say I don't have the evidence to know. I think there is a lot of unanswered questions here, and one wonders again why all these powerful people were hanging out with him. What service was he providing? I mean, was he really just managing their money? Maybe. I mean, some of these people have claimed he was just such a sparkling intellect and a fun guy to hang out with. I'm a little suspicious of that idea, but this is why, I mean, ultimately, this is why I think people want these files opened up. They want to know if intelligence agencies had connections to Epstein, or maybe was it just someone else powerful who intervened to protect him? What was going on here? And so that is why there is such a fervor in the United States for this information.
CNN was reporting today sort of new photos, new video evidence of Epstein and Trump together, Epstein attending Trump's second wedding, Epstein and Trump and Ivanka, sort of 12 years old. I mean, where is that taking us? Because obviously we know there was a friendship between the men. So on one hand, it's not new. But does any of this tie Trump to Epstein's crimes?
Well, I think the most interesting reporting we've had in the past few weeks came from the Wall Street Journal, which
Sure.
reported and alleged that Donald Trump, as part of this sort of birthday gift for Epstein, in I believe 2002, it was before his initial arrest, is the important part, that he wrote this letter that featured a drawing of a nude woman, and suggested that they had secrets, and sort of said, like, you enigmas always stay young, and may every day be a secret. And so I think that is something people keyed in on, because it suggests that I mean, who knows what it means, but I think if you think that Donald Trump's ties with Epstein went beyond just the social, it suggests that they had some kind of secret between them. And famously in 2002, Trump gave a quote about Epstein to a journalist where he said, paraphrasing here, Jeffrey really likes women, as much as I do, and in Jeffrey's case, some of them very young. And so that suggests as well that Trump was almost like hinting at an open secret.
And nobody is doubting the Wall Street Journal reporting, right? I mean, I know Trump is trying to sue, but no one else in the sort of journalistic community doubts that story is true, right?
Yeah, I mean, my sense is that no one has really challenged it. I mean, beyond Trump's lawsuit. I think there are some questions that are out there. I mean, obviously they haven't produced the letter. It's not clear if they have it. But the Wall Street Journal is obviously a very well-respected journalistic outlet, and no one has really knocked that story down.
And presumably the corollary of that is that if you are the editor, the publisher of the Wall Street Journal, and you know how explosive this is going to be, you're not going to casually drop this into the newspaper without feeling pretty sure about your sourcing.
Exactly. And this is, of course, a massive libel risk. This is, and again, I mean, the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch, someone who I don't think would really bend over backwards to take a cheap shot at Trump. But on the other hand, obviously, y'all are familiar with him as well in the UK. It seems as though, he's obviously invested a lot in the Wall Street Journal and its journalistic credibility.
Well, can we just talk about some of the more recent handling of this? We've done a bit on the history, but have you felt that the way that the White House, which, let's face it, is incredibly sophisticated in understanding media and understanding social media, in kind of being able to set the agenda, has been caught rather flat-footed, and maybe DOJ going off in one direction without the authorization of the White House, who wanted them to go in another direction, while the FBI wanted something different as well?
I think this has been a huge debacle for the Trump administration and the White House. I think Donald Trump typically really has a close grasp of what his base wants and how to remain tied to them politically. And this is something that, I feel like I've never seen before. Him just sort of flailing around for weeks at a time. This idea that clearly, I would say, I think based just on how this has been handled, I think there was an order from Trump or someone close to him to essentially shut this down immediately. And that is why we got that memo that said, the case is over, get over it. And then Trump continued to say, he went from, why are people still talking about this, to insulting his own supporters, calling them weaklings and stupid. And I mean, I think that's kind of politics 101. Maybe don't call your supporters stupid. And so, yeah, I mean, this has been a real quagmire. I mean, the House, which is the House of Representatives, which is controlled by Republicans, is shutting down early this week to avoid having a vote on releasing the Epstein files.
So Mike Johnson has been brought into line, because originally he was one of those voices who was saying, no, we do want to see what's going on. We do want to see the Epstein files, whatever an Epstein file looks like. And maybe we'll come on to that. Mike Johnson has now realised that he just has to do whatever the president tells him to, right?
That appears to be the case. I mean, I think these Republicans are very willing to pay a lot of lip service to saying, oh, we would love the Epstein files to come out. But then when it comes to the votes, they're either tabling them or they're voting against them. And they're saying, well, we just want to do it the right way. I mean, I think clearly the message here from the White House has been, shut it down. And now they're headed into the August vacation, so the Congress will be away for a month. And I think they're hoping it'll blow over or something else will happen that will consume the news cycle. But clearly, at least some Republican lawmakers are willing to break with Trump here, which is why they can't have a vote on it, because obviously all the Democrats would vote to release it, and some number of Republicans would, and it would pass. So I think, in a way, I mean, shutting down the House for this, I mean, it's unprecedented. It's so bizarre. And I think it represents a real fear of what's in those files.
So just talk us through the files, because, we're not talking about binders here. We're not talking about sort of stuff on people's desks. We're talking about what? FBI intelligence on a computer somewhere, or what do we mean?
Yeah. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of files. I mean, you're right that there isn't like one room that has a padlock on it and we need to open it up. I mean, this relates to both the initial Epstein investigation during the George W. Bush administration, and then his federal indictment in 2019, shortly before he died in jail. And presumably, possibly I mean, yeah, so those would be FBI investigations. One wonders, I mean, if this intelligence asset thing is true, perhaps the FBI would have swept in some intelligence files, maybe from other agencies. Or, there are also kind of like just stray reports about Epstein that the FBI collected over the years. The New York Times had a story about an Epstein employee who complained to the FBI about his relationship with Trump. She said she had kind of a weird encounter where he came on to her, and she alleged that Trump made some remark, or Epstein made a remark about, the woman being too old. And so she started to wonder what's going on with the two of these men and underage girls.
What is the trajectory of this? Does it go quiet now? Do people accept it? And a question that Donald Trump said when asked about his Deputy Attorney General going to see Ghislaine Maxwell, that he knew nothing about it and it was the first he'd heard of it. Do you buy that?
No, I don't buy that. I mean, this is sort of a thing Trump has done throughout here, saying like, What are you talking about? Who's Jeffrey Epstein?" And clearly he's I would say very invested. I mean, he's constantly posting about it. You're right. The next step here is this sort of Ghislaine Maxwell thing. I think the administration is trying to offer the public something in a way that they can close it up. And say, well, we did it, but in a way that doesn't really open the Pandora's box. I think what they're really concerned about is what is in these files about Donald Trump. And I think there's not a ton of evidence that he was part of a child sex trafficking ring with Epstein in the way that led up to Epstein's arrest in 2019. But I think there might be a lot of embarrassing stuff. And I think there might be a lot of stuff that says, oh, is Donald Trump a creep? I mean, look, we've got him on video talking about sexually assaulting women. So it's sort of like, it's amazing that debate is not settled already. But I think that, for example, during the Epstein file review, when they were still planning to release it, according to the Democratic Senator Dick Durbin, he said he heard from people within the FBI who said the agents reviewing the files were told, if if Donald Trump is mentioned in these files, flag it to us. And then were those files taken out? Were they destroyed? Who knows? But I think clearly the administration is concerned about what's in all the files. So instead they're saying, well, maybe we'll release the grand jury testimony, probably not really relevant in terms of connection to Trump. And they're saying we're going to go to Ghislaine Maxwell, who I think is going to be very willing to cut a deal with the Trump administration in a way that would keep Trump out of it.
And before we go, the sad news that Stephen Colbert, a great staple of late night television in America, satirist, humorist, entertainer, is off. And someone is taking a victory lap over his departure, one Donald J. Trump. And Stephen Colbert addressed it in characteristic fashion.
On Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." How dare you, sir? Would an untalented man be able to compose the following satirical witticism? Go yourself.
Yeah, that's his sort of deprecating goodbye. And it was taken up by late night friends, rivals, one Jon Stewart, who turned the traditional Colbert song and dance routine into his own meme.
Go yourself! Bring it down. Let's bring it down.
That's actually Jon Stewart taking the piss out of Stephen Colbert. But there was another moment where they all turned up for his last show. I mean, look, you can make what you will of sort of late night American comedy, and it's probably not the same flavour that we have here. It's not particularly
I
dry.
loved Colbert when I was in America. That's what I'd stay up for.
Okay. Because you asked that question, who stays up for late night
TV.
shows? And I guess the answer is not enough people, because the reason he got the show cancelled, we think, was because the numbers were dropping. No?
I mean,
what do you think?
numbers dropping, and also CBS owned by, Paramount.
And the deal that came through.
And the deal that came through, and what happened to 60 Minutes. And, maybe there was something about
Do you think it was
they wanted
political?
to sail into calmer political waters because Stephen Colbert was really close to the boat.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? We will be back next week. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye for now.
The Newsagents USA.